I better not be rude about this one, because it is, honestly, as Stefan said earlier this morning, and as John said last night, it is a real honour to welcome Ingmar. He is probably one of the busiest men in the world with his commitments to the International Olympic Committee and various other governing bodies of world sport. And it's tremendous that he's taken time on a Saturday afternoon to be with you here for the club meeting. So without further ado, Ingmar De Vos, the FEI President.
Thank you very much, and I have to say my English is not my mother tongue either, so with Mr. Luiten we can easily talk in Dutch, and but we are happy to be here in Amsterdam, and as you will see, I adapted a little bit the color of my tie, which probably will change later today, but yeah. So thank you very much for the invitation, and it's really a pleasure for me to be here. And the reason that I'm here is also to underpin the fact that officials are important. Officials are one of the most important stakeholders for the success of our sport, and I believe it's really the duty of the FEI to support the officials in all ways possible, and we are trying to do that. I'm sure it can be better, but it's like always work in progress, but officials are key to the success of our sport, and that's why we are here. We have the jumping director here, we have the legal director of the FEI here. We are very happy to have the chair of the jumping committee, who is a high-level official, so officials are taking over, and so we need to be very careful what we say, also with these harassment policies. We have created, as you will know, in 2017 an officials working group, because we believe that there is a lot that needs to be done to improve the situation of the official. This working group has delivered a report with 15 recommendations, and that was delivered in 2018. And these recommendations are very interesting, they are very broad, and we have in FEI headquarters give it a lot of thought how to implement them, because it's nice to get recommendations, but then the second part is to implement them, and that's not that easy. So I will try to give you an overview of where we stand there. You know that sport is more professional than ever before, with an increased level of responsibility of officials. And this is not only because there is an important increase of prize money. There was lately a show in Prague, I believe, where it was over 10 million euros prize money, which is a lot. But also your decisions are not only impacting on prize money distribution, but also on distribution of points for the Longines ranking. And the Longines ranking list being a very important tool for distributing invitations for athletes to events. Very important, because it's a way to measure the quality of the athletes. And let's not forget, also your judgment can have a very important impact on qualification for Olympic Games. Olympic Games, which are still, in my view at least, the most important competition for our sport every 4 years. And not only the qualification, but also the minimum eligibility, which is also an important criteria. So where do we stand with the implementation of these 15 recommendations? And let's maybe start with the easiest one. It's, I think, the most important one, crucial one, but in order to start the process running, and that was recommendation number 14, establish a new management position within the FEI headquarters, namely a head of officials. I'm very happy that after quite a difficult search to find somebody who would fit that role. We have found the person and started beginning of January, Frank Spadinger from Austria, who has a long career in the national federation, but who is also an official. So that would hopefully will shorten the time needed for him to get fully productive, I would say. I know he was invited here, but we thought it was a bit too early to ask him already to give an explanation here, as we have to give him a little bit of time to start understanding the role in the function. But having him will drastically shorten the period needed for such a person to be operational, fully operational, and tackle the things. So that's an important box that was ticked. We have recommendations 1 and 2, which are the introduction of a single code of conduct for all FEI officials, and number 2, the introduction of job descriptions for all FEI officials. I'm happy to say that this has been delivered. It's, by the way, I believe, a topic later today on the agenda, the code of conduct. There is also mentioning of checklists, but we have to identify why we need checklists. Maybe we don't need them if the job description is already very detailed, or maybe we need them more for to identify what we need to educate to our officials. Recommendation 3 is a very important one for me personally. It says develop a competency-based evaluation system with the goal of replacing the age limit. I've always had something against the age limit because, and I'm not pointing at anybody particular, but I know very clever and active and healthy people that are over 70 or 72, and I know also people that are much younger and absolutely not qualified. So it has nothing to do with age. And I'm very happy that we are now tackling this, but it's not easy because you need to replace it by something. And when we looked at developing a competency-based evaluation system, we thought to be clever and to look at other international federations to understand what they do so that we can steal this information. But regretfully, there is none. And these other international federations are asking us, well, keep us informed of what you're doing so that maybe we can also implement it. So basically, it's something that we have to invent, start from scratch with a blank sheet. We need to identify and see how we are going to do this. And of course, there was a big discussion internally of, we first need this system before we can abolish the age limit. And I didn't really agree with that. So we have, as you can see, and we published it not so long ago, we have now a procedure in place where we can allow people to stay on for a longer time until this competency-based evaluation system is operational. So we are really looking forward to that, but as it is new, as we need to do it from scratch, we need to take time to take the right approach. So you will allow me to apologize for the fact that this is not something that will be done in one day. But at least we have given the opportunity in the meantime for officials that did good work, whose term is coming to an end last year or this year, to prolong it on an annual basis until we have this assessment tool in place. So this is something we will work on, and we have told the new director of officials and education that this is his first priority. So that's good to know, and we have already had some discussions about how we can do it, but it's quite some work. Recommendations 4, 5, 6, and 7, they are about education, and of course that is work in process. An education calendar needs to be established in function of the needs per function, per level, and per region, and they need to be integrated in the FEI database. The framework of these courses need to be harmonized across the disciplines. Now it was each discipline did it in a different way. There are some basic things like the things that Michael explained, appeal, protest, disqualification, elimination. The legal system need to be the same across all disciplines and need to be educated the same way. It makes no sense that in one course for driving, one is telling something completely different than in the course for jumping. So it needs to be integrated and needs to be signed off by the relevant department. We will create course directors and a director general list for each discipline. Who will overlook this, and we will also educate course directors from a pedagogical perspective, because that's also important. How is the message brought to our officials? How is education organized? And it's not really complicated to do all of that, but it's a lot of work. If we have to do it for all the disciplines, all levels, and we have also to take in consideration the different situation. Mika mentioned already there is different cultures in different parts of the world, but also different languages. So we need to establish there a full and integrated plan. Recommendation 8 is maybe a very easy one. It's a compulsory national federation recommendation only upon entering the first level. And that one has a bit of an history, because of course we recognize the authority and the role of the national federation in not only entering athletes for events, but also to put forward applications for officials. We believe that the first door, because many of the athletes come from as a national official and then make a move like a promotion to the international level. But we also believe that once the National Federation has proposed a candidate, and this candidate is starting his career within the FEI, that we do not have to ask all the time national federations to approve the next steps. They can, of course, refuse an official at a certain stage if an official did something wrong in its country, and the federation feels that the official cannot continue on an international level. We will assess that, and we can of course take a decision. But once an official in general started his career within the FEI, then we should not ask the national federation back. I remember a time was sometimes very funny that the national federations entered officials for courses, and even if these officials passed the course brilliantly, then the national federation refused to appoint or to sign these promotion off. And that is, of course, if you say A, you need to see B also. It's not fine to allow somebody to participate in a course and then afterwards say, no, we don't take the result in consideration. So we know that there is always a bit of a possibility for some closed shop maneuvers, so we want to avoid that. But that's single entry, and we will, of course, do that in an integrated database. Recommendation 9 is the FEI to establish a common fund to support developing officials and getting more officiating experience. This fund has been created and that has been communicated, is published on the website. But we need more tools to implement this in a transparent and in a consistent way. And you have also seen recommendation 10, which is the FEI to introduce a rotation for FEI officials at FEI events. We believe that we need to avoid that at a certain moment we get something what is sometimes called like a Stockholm syndrome, where the official gets so attached to the organizer that the objectivity is disappearing. So rotation is important. It's already partly implemented, especially when it comes to veterinarians. We have this 3-year rotation. We have given this a lot of thought, and we have now defined and it's quite detailed, what we believe rotation is. And we know that there are sometimes these events, multi weeks events for especially young horses or in the winter season, where sometimes in parts of the world you have events that go on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. We of course understand that we need to adapt our definition of rotation in function of these kind of events also, but we have done that. But what is really important, and this is also related to recommendation 11, which says FEI to create a development pool. This is a pool of officials that are identified as needing support in order to make progress in their career, and especially to gain enough experience by officiating. And for that, we need also recommendation 12, which is say that the FEI to extend the number of FEI officials appointed to FEI events in all disciplines. I mean, why do we need that? It's just to give opportunities to officials that never get opportunities to officiate, to get experience. Now, you know, we have in total in the FEI more than 4,500 events every year, which is a record. We have thousands of officials, which is great, fantastic. So, but you will understand that if we want to implement these recommendations, that we really need to develop and improve our database, because we want to identify officials that have passed an exam, but never were on a schedule of a show. And in the end, after 2 years, no experience, they lose their qualification. So we need to identify them. So if we want to help officials, we need to identify who they are, where they are, how much time a year they are officiating or not, and then we can help them with having more appointments to be done by the FEI. That's not to make life of organizers bad, but it's just to give our officials the chance to get educated and to get practical experience, because it's not good only to pass an exam. So for that we have to create a lot of things, and especially an integrated database that will identify and will give our staff the opportunity to identify the officials that need support, that need appointments in order to be active, and in order also to make the necessary promotions, because we need good officials and we need high-level officials, because as you can see in our calendar, the number of high-level events is increasing every year. So we need to have a very clear pathway for our officials. So one of the things that we also will do is introduction of what we call the electronic or the online schedule. Now you know this is this very lengthy paper document. We want now this document to become an electronic form, where only the fields that are relevant have to be filled in, but also where the officials will be entered like in a database, so that we know who is going where, and that we can have a complete overview of the whereabouts of our officials. Recommendation 13 is a difficult one. This is a bit together with recommendation 15, and it's all about, on the one hand, the creation of a top layer of FEI officials for the professional sport. That's a tricky one. And it's also recommendation 15 to develop a harmonized approach to officials per diems across geography and discipline. It's also a complicated one, and I will a bit explain. Both recommendations have and will most probably have an important financial impact, especially for those who are supposed to pay the bill. And I believe to understand that everybody, except maybe those, that everybody expects that organizers have to pay that bill. But you need to know that, like, we have a memory of understanding with the International Jumping Officials Club. We have also a memorandum of understanding, an agreement with the Organizers Club, where we have the obligation every time that we would take a decision that would have an important financial impact on the organizers, that we need to consult them. And of course, we need to be careful that we do not lose organizers. Be aware of the fact that in many events and in some other disciplines, there are officials that are volunteers that are not paid, because if the organizers should pay them, then the organization cannot take place. This is the reality in some parts of the world and in some disciplines. So we need to agree that the quality of the work done by officials should be the same, also whatever level it is. It's not because there is a lower level event that then the quality of the judging or of the officials can be less. I mean, we need to do a professional and a good job at each level, and not only at the 5-star events. So we need to be very careful with the implementation of these recommendations, and whereas some responsibilities can, of course, vary according to the level, which can then be reflected in a different level of compensation, we need also to avoid to create a closed shop again for officials. So, and let's also not forget that in some countries there is also an important tax aspect of it. I remember a story of, and it was not in jumping, was in dressage, but of some judges who were judging in the United States and got a very nice per diem. I was really surprised. It was like $500 per day, dressage. With the result that these judges the next year couldn't come anymore because they couldn't get into the country because they need a green card. So sometimes it can work counterproductive. So we need to look at all different aspects of this financial policy. Anyway, I went through these 15 recommendations, so this is work in progress, and we are very enthusiastic. And under the leadership of our new Director Officials and Education, I'm sure that things will move quickly now. We have already taken the commitment to invest, so not only in having this director, but also invest a lot in the development of IT. In order to create these platforms, these online forums. We want to go more and more to online forums. We started with veterinary. As you know, that we have to deal with, I believe it was like something like 3,000 veterinary reports per year. This has been automated. This is now an electronic document. So if a veterinarian puts in a certain comment, then it goes directly to the right department. Nobody has to read all these papers in order to identify if there is an issue, and we want now to extend that also to other officials. And the first priority will be, and I'm happy to tell you that, will be jumping, where we will develop the online report, the digital report for the jumping judge, so the foreign judge, and for the chief steward. It will be the first one that will be developed in jumping. So you will be able to do it online. It will also avoid a lot of work, I believe, in John's, or I hope at least, in John's department, so they don't have to go to these piles of paper that they receive every week, and that things are flagged automatically, and that we also can react much faster by informing organizers and national federations about things that need to be approved at their event. So I hope this really proves that our utmost respect for officials, and that we will hopefully in the very near future that you will see a real difference, and that you will feel more supported by the FEI than ever before. Let me also take the opportunity to the last 5 minutes to highlight some other points that are in the pipeline and could be of interest for you. Michael already gave the indication that we are reviewing the legal system. I believe that he did not mention, but of course before the sports forum there will be a document that will be shared with everybody. No, you are going just to open a discussion at the sports forum. Well, that will be new, but then I believe it's really important that if you have points that you bring it to his attention so that he already can prepare himself for that. Also the online, and I see here a very famous athlete walking in, so it's good to see that also the athletes are here to support the officials. But just to allow me to make a little point on the online invitation and online entry system, which is, as you know, very important for us because we can make as many rules and publish as many rules as we want, like the invitation system. But if we have no tools to implement it, then it's very interesting literature, but nothing more. So we have been working last year already with some pilot phases with a new online invitation system. Some of you have probably already worked with it. We came to the conclusion that it basically did not deliver what we wanted, because the system was made in such a way that we are inviting athletes in descending order according to the Longines ranking, but that the mechanism was not fast enough to go down, deep down in the ranking to identify athletes that should be invited. It just didn't go fast enough. Although it was already a 10-week process with 8 weeks of active invitations, we only could go down to rank number, I believe, 360 something, and that was still not enough to get athletes from the ranking participating in, certainly not a 1-star, but there it doesn't apply, of course, not for a 2-star, but also not for a 3-star, and even for a 4-star, partly. The only events where it worked was for 5-star events, but that are the minority of the number of events. So we decided to change the system, to review it. And what we are now working on, but that's our IT department, and where we hope that we will have a pilot phase in the second part of the year, is where we will allow athletes to apply for events, so that we will turn it around, and it's the athlete who has to indicate where he wants to go, and probably with this wish list. First, of course, I would like to go to that 5-star. If I cannot go to that 5-star, I would like to go to that 4-star. And my third choice will be a 2-star closer to home than a 3-star farther away. So they will have the possibility to indicate their preference. And then at a certain date, the computer will attribute the places to the athletes in function of their wish list, so that we can make sure that the spots that are reserved for athletes based upon merit through the FEI Longines ranking list, that we are actually filling them up, because today, you know, all the unused spots, they go to the organizer, which is fine. We can live with that, but we need to do our utmost to fill up all these spots for athletes and for riders as much as possible. So we change the system, and that will hopefully then allow us in 2020, 1st of January, to start with this system then for all events. So pilot phase is second part of the year, because they need to write quite some IT programs for that. Yes, we had last year, World Equestrian Games. I think from a sports perspective, and certainly in show jumping, they were a big success. But there were some issues, as you all know, especially in endurance. We have been looking at World Equestrian Games. We have discussed it in our board, and we have presented it also in the framework of our General Assembly last year in Manama. We have now taken the approach to say, listen, we are opening a candidate bidding process for individual championships, as the World Equestrian Games is so big. We have already opened for 2022. We have already opened that twice. 2 times we have opened an application process without success, without finding a good bidder. We also don't want to be, I would say, being kept hostage by an organizing committee, especially if there is only one bidder, because these are our experiences that these are negotiations from the day that the host agreement is signed till and during the games. It's ongoing negotiations between the organizer and with the organizer who tries to get a better deal. And of course, who uses, not to say abuses, the position to negotiate all over and over and over again. And I think in such a way that I can say that from a financial perspective, these World Equestrian Games for the FEI have already cost a lot of money. So I think we needed to take the right decision, and we are opening this bidding process, and we hope then later this year in November to allocate World Championships. Now, is this the end of the World Equestrian Games? No, not necessarily, because for the World Championships we are encouraging organizers to introduce multiple bids, bids for different disciplines together, whereas for continental championships we prefer them to be isolated because it gives opportunities to smaller cities to bid and to host such an important event. But for World Championships we give a preference, or we will give a preference, to bids that are combining more disciplines. So if there is still a possibility for a bidder to come up with an idea to organize World Equestrian Games, but this will be then evaluated and assessed, comparing it with other bids that are introduced and that are not necessarily combining all the events. And we also want to go to organizers and venues that have already proven to work. So no new venues, no for the first time World Equestrian Games in an infrastructure, in a venue that has never been used for it before. So these are our World Championships, and they are, especially in our Olympic disciplines, qualifies for the Olympic Games. So we need to make sure that the organizer, the venue, have proven to work and not jump into the unknown and then maybe have big problems and no qualification for the Olympic Games. That for the World Championships, I'm also happy to say that finally, and it took some time, but that the end of last year for the Longines FEI Nations Cup, we have now the organizers signed up for the next 3 years. So that secures the future of the Longines FEI Nations Cup. We still have to allocate the final of Division 2, but also there for 2019 we will have a very good organizer. So that's fine. It took a lot of time, but I think we need to be very grateful to Longines to have switched from timekeeper sponsor of the Nations Cup to the title sponsor of the Nations Cup, which really allows us to continue. Last but not least, next year Olympic Games. Next year, 2020. Olympic Games in Tokyo, of course, very important for the future of our sport, and I'm very happy that our position of our 3 Olympic disciplines and the Paralympic discipline is safe. We are in Tokyo. Much progress is made there. The venue will be fantastic. It's a brand new venue. It's the same venue that was used for the Olympic Games in 1964, but they have put everything down, and they are building a complete new venue, which is almost finished. So Kazu, you were also involved in that, and we are very grateful for the Japan Racing Association, who is the owner of that venue, for doing all these investments. They are not on the account of the Olympic Games, only the operational costs are on the account of the Olympic Games. The investment is done by the Japan Racing Association. But I'm also happy to say we are good for Paris also, Paris 2024, where we will be in a temporary venue in front of Le Château de Versailles, which is a very, very nice place, We are going there on the 5th of February to look at the venue and to see how the FEI can support the organizer, because this is in line with Olympic Agenda 2020 and the new norm established by the IOC, where you can understand, given the fact that the IOC find it's more and more difficult to find organizers for such big events as Olympic Games, like we have the difficulty for the World Equestrian Games. So they introduced the new norm. We look very careful to the cost effectiveness of the games in order to deliver good games, but with a price tag that is acceptable. And the role of the international federations in all sports will increase very importantly, because we have the know-how, we have the expertise. These organizing committees that only do one game and then they finish, they don't have that expertise. You also know that there are a lot of consultants running around to try to find business, which makes it also sometimes more expensive. So the role of the international federations and also of the FEI to support organizing committees in delivering these games with a normal acceptable price tag will increase a lot. And I would also like to thank the people that are from the FEI that are involved in this and that are supporting us not only in Olympic Games but also in Pan American Games, which will take place this year in Lima, Asian Games and so on. So the role of the international federation is important. You know that we have new formats for the Olympic Games. We are not going to test them for the first time at the Olympic Games. That would be a high risk. We have identified an organizer that is prepared to test them, and that's Hagen, the show of Mr. Kasselman. We will there test jumping and dressage, new formats, and we are inviting all the relevant partners to be there, like Olympic Broadcasting System, ORIS, the result system, Swiss Timing for the timekeeping and data handling, so OBS for the broadcasting, for graphics, so that we can test everything, and if necessarily we do another test until things are perfect, because we want these Olympic Games to be a big success. So this is what I wanted just to bring to you in a nutshell. As a closing, I would say really we very much appreciate what you do every day and the important responsibilities you have. We know it's not always easy. You sometimes need to make difficult decisions that don't make you necessarily popular. An official does not need to be popular, but dialogue with all stakeholders is, of course, very important. But be assured that we are here for you. The FEI is a service organization. We are also here to service our officials, which, as I said in my introduction, play a very important role in the success of our sport. And I wish you all the best and good luck in your future projects and career. Thank you very much.
Mr. De Vos, thank you very much. You promised us an update on the recommendations. You updated us much more to give us an insight for your daily business and the progress the FEI is making. So thank you very much. And I can assure you the title was Cooperation, IGOC and FEI on the recommendations. We're glad to help you implementing the recommendations. So thank you. You were talking about your Thai. It's a wonderful Thai way in the Netherlands. You get free drinks in the restaurant, I think. But we also have a special Thai for you. It's very high quality. It's coming from an island. And this is for you. Thank you very much.